That's not the clapper. I don't know what the hell he's doing, Jared.
273.
That's not a bad number, though. We've been doing this for a little while. We got this thing down pretty good. We might even expand it someday and do a few other things. So there's a lot of things in the works, John, as you and I both know. Should be fun.
Indeed. Welcome to the Rebel's Edge, folks. Jared is going to be handling all of the production duties today. All of the sound effects, all of the columns going down the right side of the screen and so forth. And Pete will be handling all the other duties while I just introduce topics. That's kind of like my thing.
He's good at that, though. You're damn good at it. What the hell? And by the way, we should do a plug, John. We're going to be somewhere this weekend together. We haven't been together in quite a while.
We're going to be in Orlando at the Money Show. So to Kim and to Aaron and to Debbie and the whole team at the Money Show, thank you. We'll be signing the first few copies of our book. Yes. The debut is Monday, the 30th. So it's not an option. That's the title of the book, folks.
That's right. Yeah, that should be great. We're looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun. We haven't released a book in a while, and this one's a lot different from what we've done in the past. So it should be a lot of fun, John. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and we'll do a couple lectures, Pete, and we'll hang out with Charles Payne. I'll be on with Charles on Friday, in fact, leading into this. So
nice.
Hopefully we'll both mention it on air. And it should be a lot of fun. But you tuned in for the Rebel's Edge, and I'm going to kick it off with the macro minute, Pete, which is that stocks are falling. Yeah, there were disappointing Alphabet earnings. And Alphabet, which was a $1.6 trillion company, is down 9%. So that's a lot of billions in that 9% drop. And by the way, yields are heading back up towards 5.
So I've got an interesting macro minute for you, John, that came out of nowhere. But how about these new home sales? Now, we all know the backdrop, right? We know that we've seen rates now is in terms of mortgage rates up at levels that haven't been around for a while. We've been way higher in the past, but recently, no. And here we are at, call it a 7% rate for your mortgage. And yet their numbers are outrageous. I think that was a shock. At least it shocked me because September sales were up 12%. That's a big number when you consider the fact that we've had 10 weeks now where those mortgage rates have been above 7%. We've been much higher even than 7%. So it really just says again, gosh, the consumer really is strong. It's very impressive.
Yeah, they're going to be tested though, Pete, and we all know that we're getting into that period right now when they're going to be tested, especially with holiday shopping and all the rest that'll put added debt on those cards. All right. Let's go to Fantastic Futures.
Fantastic Futures.
All right, Pete. My Fantastic Future is not fantastic, but take a look at this chart, folks, of natural gas. Because when you look at it, this is a 5-year chart. When you look at this, you'll see that the fact that, we were up 1% today, but we're still right around $3 per million British thermal unit or BTU. You look at where we've come from, Pete, you might say, boy, there's a lot more upside potentially than there is downside from here for nat gas. So beware.
I'm going to give you an interesting one because it's happened in such a short period of time. And that's what we talk about all the time here, right? We talk about velocity, we talk about volume, we talk about volatility. How about gold, John? In the last 20 days, gold is up $170. That's a pretty big number. I mean, at 1,826, and now here we are at 1,998 we hit today. It's a big jump. We've been all over the place. It's interesting to see that one. I just thought I'd throw that out there because you and I both, man, we look at every single part of the market that we can every day, whether it's gold or silver or copper or whatever. And then, of course, we go through all the various sectors. But, this is a very, very solid move to the upside, very sharp move to the upside. So I want people to know it's always good to have that in your back pocket to know that gold has been rushing to the upside. Silver been hanging around that 23 level. But there's a lot of things going on in this world right now and materials and so forth. We're just seeing everything moving at rates like we haven't seen before.
I love gold.
There's Jared.
There's Jared and Pete, alias Gold Member.
Great.
You've got the gold shirt on today, Pete, so I'm going with that.
That's true.
Let's talk about Stride.
Yeah.
Switching over to stocks. LRN is the symbol for Stride, and it's a tech-facing education player. They recorded Q1 earnings, Pete, of $480 million. That's up almost 13% since they reported the same period last year. Now, that's a pretty big jump, and that's why the stock, on a very negative day in the market, especially for the NASDAQ, that stock, Stride, is up pretty good.
Yeah, it's having an absolute historic type move to the upside, John. Matter of fact, 52-week highs. It got up over $54 today. So it's not only up 20+%, although I'm sure it's getting pulled a little bit by the markets themselves, but it's been up as much as 20%. It did hit those levels at 54. You mentioned about a lot of the different targets that they've had. They also have a huge short interest, which, as we know, when they start squeezing you and you start squeezing a little bit tighter and a little bit tighter, these things tend to do these kind of moves. It's exactly what we're seeing play out today. They also have great free cash flow. So the balance sheet, not so bad at all, although there are a lot of shorts in there that are kind of crying right now, John.
Oh, yeah. Just like there are on any day when, you're unfortunate enough to be short something that's going up. And it's why Pete and I like owning puts instead of shorting stocks. Mm-hmm. Shorting stocks, it doesn't matter how much you put into it. You're down 18% against a short from last night on the close in LRN. But if you were long a put, all you can lose is what you paid for that put. So you're not losing 18% of a big chunk of money like you would if you were short the stock. All right, Pete, let's talk about waste management because, we're in earnings season. You keep talking about it. A lot of people are beating. This is one of them. They had revenue of $5.2 billion roughly, up from $5 billion a year ago. And their margins are hanging in there, even going up a little. And for, a company like Waste Management that's been around a while, this is a pretty damn solid report.
Yeah, revenue was up year over year very nicely. The company's doing a great job with just about everything from a fundamental perspective, as you were just talking about. Margin expansion is great. Free cash flow is expanding. Well, why is the free cash flow expanding as fast as it is? Because they've actually been able to curb back a little bit on the CapEx. They thought they'd have to spend more. They don't. So where does that go? Free cash flow. When you look at this name, John, nice move to the upside on a really difficult tape. This one's not at 52-week highs, and it trades in a fairly tight area. But in that tight area, I'll tell you what, Waste Management's pretty volatile. It's moving all over the place, but it is in a tighter ring than most. 148 to 173 is the 52-week low and high, and it's sitting right in between there at 164. So interesting one, but I'll tell you what, they absolutely are killing it right now, and they're doing an outstanding job with how they are managing this company. You got to love it from a financial perspective.
Yeah, this is something that, of course, we all, one way or another, consumers and businesses have to have waste disposal, and this is the biggest one in the country. So you're right, Pete. Solid report. Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a look at SunPower. And this is one where the shorts have feasted. And when I say feasted, in 2021, Pete, this stock was over 55, over double nickel, $55 a share. Look at it today. It's down. It was under $4 a share earlier today. So it's another horrible day for a company that's had basically nothing but horrible earnings. And this one, it's for good reason, Pete. It's not just that they missed on earnings. It's that they may need to restate earnings going back a ways because they've been making some mistakes. At least that's what the board called them, mistakes in their statements.
Oh, that was ugly. I mean, honestly, John, when you're looking out there, I mean, it's one thing to have poor earnings and having to have to say it out there, but it's another thing when you've got to restate it because they may have left things out. And were they doing that on purpose? We don't know that, but certainly this makes it look pretty bad. And it's a good reason why the stock today is at a 52-week low. Demand for the solar has really started to drop over the last couple of quarters, particularly, John. You take a look across the whole sector, you'll know what I'm talking about. It just has been something where people aren't going there the way they did. The demand isn't what it once was, and that's become a bit of a problem. But when you've got to restate your earnings, that's never a good thing, and that's why this stock is hovering around the 52-week lows.
Yeah, that is an ugly stock, Pete, and the sector has not been doing well. From Enphase to SunPower or Solar Edge. I mean, there's a lot of pain in the solar space, and I don't know that wind's a lot better. All right, let's talk about Worldline. This is another one of these European fintechs, Pete. It's basically a payments processor, and it's out of France, and it's certainly out of favor. I mean, it's down 55, 60% in one day. And you might say, wow, that's a huge move. I bet they don't see those very often. Well, I would say, you know what? There was a UK-based payments company yesterday that dropped 72%. And so when you take a look at these charts, folks, I mean, here's a chart of Worldline, and it's down hard, as you can see from that chart, just falling out of bed. And what's strange is, of course, since it's an American Depository Receipt, or ADR, that it mainly trades in France. It does trade here, but the volume's not here. It's overseas. So it's only traded about 150,000 shares today. If this was a U.S. listing only, Pete, this would probably be about 100 million shares against whatever its normal activity would be. It's fallen apart, and we had unusual activity in a payments processor that also does buy now, pay later. That would be Affirm, AFRM. And we've already feasted on this one, Pete, but because of today's and yesterday's big sell-offs for that British company and now this one, we're seeing people just flooding out of these, anything to do with fintech. And boy, you can hardly blame them when you see drops like this.
Yeah, the struggles that fintech is facing right now is brutal, John. And when you cut your outlook, when you cut your revenue growth, when you cut or actually report your Q3 and you missed, boy, that's like strike one, strike two, strike three, and you're out. I mean, these guys are out. 52-week lows for the stock. They've been getting absolutely hammered. If you're thinking about, well, maybe it's a good time to maybe speculate and go in there, I would look at it a different way. I would say, you know what? These guys got enough problems, especially when you get that kind of an outlook. You might want to stay away from this one for quite a while and then reevaluate it another time. But like you said, the industry is under fire right now, and it's not just this name. And that's another problem. So until we start to see anything change there, I don't think this is one of these, well, I think I'll buy the dip. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's, you know what, just walk away, take a look. There's got to be something else out there that looks a little bit better right now than this.
Yeah, I mean, when you knock off, nearly 4 billion in market cap and take it down to 2.8 billion, 2.7 billion or whatever, that's a big drop. So yeah, I think Pete's right. You can't emphasize enough how bad things are in Europe right now in terms of payment processors and, these fintech companies. Not as bad here, but pretty bad. And somehow the American consumer continues to spend. And I still say, Pete, I've said it before, I think we're whistling by the graveyard if you think this is going to continue. All right. This was an interesting one, Pete. I know sports is one that you lead off in, but I'm going to say, this particular exchange where Caleb Williams, last year's Heisman Award winner, was saying, you know what, if I come out and play football this year in the NFL, actually next year, 2024, I think maybe I should own part of the team. While I'm all for everybody getting everything they can, Pete, if you can earn it, great. And certainly this has played that way in the past. George Halas is a great example. He ended up starting and owning the Decatur Stanleys that became the Chicago Bears. So he was a player and an owner. But these days, we're talking billions of dollars, and we're talking about a league that isn't real happy on having anybody come in. I mean, they scrutinize you, folks. Even Tom Brady, the GOAT, is being scrutinized for that Las Vegas Raiders investment. So let's watch this for a sec, Pete, and have you comment on it.
Yeah.
But what you see is because of the way kids grow up now and focus on one sport, and they're driven, and the media coverage and the social media, and now NIL, there's this odd sense of entitlement when you haven't done anything yet. You could be the greatest quarterback in USC history. Maybe you can be that. And that's to be acknowledged and applauded. And go to the NFL and be one of the worst ever. Why would you look at this from the perspective that I'm so damn good? I'm so good. You're going to pay me now up front. That's basically what you're going to do. No one is going to give you ownership of the team, a piece of the team.
Well, I'll put it this way. If Caleb Williams wants ownership of a team, he might be able to get a piece of an XFL team or a USFL team. But the NFL doesn't need Caleb Williams. They don't. And it's just illogical. And you've been around youth sports a lot, Fred, as well. And you see when these guys are tagged at a young age, often even before they get to high school, that this guy's going to be something, people gravitate to them and insulate them from the realities of the world.
But what you see is because of the way kids grow up now.
True.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's right, Pete. And there's an entitlement, but there's also a rule. And he nailed it. I know you were saying it to me that, oh yeah, well, he could probably own an XFL team. Can't own an NFL team, not as long as you're a player. And when you're not playing anymore, if you take all your money like Tom Brady, they still might not let you own the team.
Yeah, I find the whole thing just preposterous, John. I mean, the reality is this. First of all, let's start here. Name me a USC quarterback who's ever been worth a crap in the NFL. There might be one, maybe Carson Palmer, maybe. Because I think he did go to a Super Bowl, but it probably wasn't because of him. It was probably because of the players around him, quite frankly, because there is no USC quarterbacks that have had great success at the NFL level. As a matter of fact, year in and year out, what's the biggest complaint that everybody talks about is, well, we've got these 5 quarterbacks and all 5 of them this year, they're going to make it. One of them is going to be great. And every year we see this tumble down that we generally see from a lot. I'll tell you what, here's a great example. Bryce Young. He should have probably asked for a piece of the thing from Tepper down there in Carolina, right? I mean, he's the greatest thing ever. They traded the world to get him, and the guy stinks. At least he stinks right now. Now, maybe he'll get a little bit better, but it is amazing the egos and what goes on with these college athletes, John. It will only get worse because when you look around and you see the TV coverage of the NCAA football games and everything else, and I love all of it, but it also creates the monster of ego. And that ego is a real problem, I think, as we get closer and closer to seeing guys make the next jump from high school. They get all this money now to go to college. They get all the NIL. So now these guys, some of them are making $2 and $3 million a year there. And then all of a sudden you get to the next level. You go, you know what? I don't need 20 million, 30 million. I want the team. I want a piece of the team. It's preposterous. It really is. But and anyway, as you said, you can't do it because that's one of the rules. By the way, long ago, I was offered an opportunity to coach a team and play for a team. And they actually even gave me the offer of maybe even having a piece of the team. Now, that all sounded great, but that no longer exists. That was arena football back in the 1990s or whatever. So, fortunately, I ended up staying in the financial world with you, John, because it was just after I'd left football and I'd gotten into it, and I love it. But now, sticking with the little college football, how about this one, John? I'd be curious where you are with this one. So I wanted to just have a fun conversation about college football from this perspective. Who is the most shocking team that's undefeated right now in college football? And it would be unfair to maybe include an Air Force because, who they're playing and everything else, but they're 7-0. So that would be a team that I think, going into it maybe is a little bit surprised because I don't think they were ranked in the top 25. But who was ranked number 20 coming into this year was Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is now sitting at 7-0, and they've done everything that you're asked of to do. And what they've done is, well, when they played the Little Sisters of the Poor, they didn't just put it on them. They absolutely destroyed them. That game was 73-0 against Arkansas State. And then as they've gone through the system of different teams here and there, they had to play against Texas. They beat Texas 34-30. So when you look around and you see what's going on in college football and you look and you say, well, Washington's great. But I think a lot of folks actually thought Washington probably was going to be very good this year. Michael Penix was a known entity. Everybody was very familiar. They knew Washington was good last year. They thought they might be good again. Oregon, sort of the same thing. But with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback for, it seems like every single year, John, when you go to Oklahoma, it's a new quarterback every year. It's this guy's got a year, this guy's got a year, this guy's got a year, and then they go on. Caleb Williams, by the way, started at Oklahoma. He followed Lincoln Riley back out there to USC. So is there a team that you find to be just intriguing or anything? Or maybe it's Oklahoma, because for me, Oklahoma started at number 20 and now they're number 6. And I don't see too many losses in their future right now. It could happen. They could stumble, but they look pretty damn good, John.
Well, I would say, Pete, because I'll give you a joke one. My joke one first would be either Liberty or James Madison,
right?
Which are both undefeated. And Liberty's going to play Old Dominion. And a lot of you are thinking, that's a country western band, isn't it? And yes, it is. Yes, it is. A good one, in fact. But they have some players on James Madison, and Liberty is 8-0, and they're playing Louisiana Tech. And their quarterback has 1,600 yards passing, Pete, and 600 yards rushing. So Liberty, of all places, 8-0. It's not going to be a BCS team, but they're pretty damn good. And it'd be interesting to see how many of their players can actually play at the next level. A couple of them, I'll say. But the team that's most surprising to me, undefeated, Florida State, and they almost lost to Duke last week. But they came back, which is a mark of a team, that you and I pay attention when a team's not having a good week, not having a good game, and they're down to Duke in the fourth quarter, and they come back with 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to beat Duke. So that tells me a lot about what they got inside in their heart. And so I'd say Florida State 7-0. I like this team, Pete, and that's a team with an awful lot of great athletes on it also.
I would 100% agree with you. I don't know that I'm shocked that they're undefeated, but I'm a little bit surprised just because they've had a difficult, grouping of when they play, who they play. And, Duke, that was a tough one. But that offense, those receivers are unreal. They got one kid who's about 6'6", who's lean, who can run like a deer, and a quarterback who's extremely good as well. So I agree with you, John. I think Florida State would be a team that I would say, you know what, I knew they'd be good, but I didn't know they'd be this good. And they're pretty great at this point in time. ACC's playing some good football. All right, next one, NBA. You and I love talking about this. Charles Barkley loves talking about this. Boy, for the people who haven't seen it, we may have to put that up tomorrow maybe, John, but Barkley going after the commissioner of the NBA sounded like what I've been saying and what you've been saying, John, about what the NBA is doing with all this load management and how this guy has to pull his head out of his rear end and figure this out. Well, Barkley called him out as well. But that's not where I was going necessarily. What I was going to go with is this. Speaking of guys who need load management, LeBron James. Anyway, the Lakers last night ended up playing Denver, right? You know who doesn't do a whole lot of load management is Denver and their coach. And they allow their players to, if they're beat up, they might have to sit. But they're not going to just sit. You got to take this from Michael Jordan. You got to look at Kobe Bryant. You got to look at a lot of the greatest players maybe ever to play, and the fact that they know where the money comes from, and they also know that people come to games to see them. And if that's the case, why would you do that? Why would you disappoint? Why would you not allow people to be able to see you play basketball And you are getting, as Charles Barkley said, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, $60 million a year, and you have load management. By the way, a local Minnesota kid's playing for Denver this year, John, Zeke Naji, who came out of Arizona, but he's out of Minnesota. He just signed a contract, 4-year, $32 million just the other day. I'm happy for that kid. It's great because, you know, Minnesota has become not just a hockey area of absolute just stars, but the NBA is starting to get more and more kids from the state of Minnesota. The basketball programs are going crazy. But Djokovic, John, last night, it's too bad he didn't have such a good game. He started out, he had 29 points, led the team. He had 13 rebounds, led the team. He had 11 assists, led the team. Is this team going to be able to come back and win? Do you think they are one of those that can be this back-to-back, maybe even back-to-back-to-back? Because they're actually pretty young when you start looking at the squad. I mean, they've got guys who've been in the NBA a while, but they're not old-timers either, like LA is right now with LeBron. And, you know, you look at that group, they're pretty old. Denver's pretty young.
Yeah. And Pete, to your point, the NBA and the commissioner should really be focused on keeping fans' butts in the seats, season ticket holders, and all that sort of thing. If with this load management, a lot of us, if I was a big basketball fan in person, I'm not. I used to be with Jordan and all that, and it's kind of like Pete. I saw the GOAT, saw him play a lot in person. I'm fine watching the rest of the guys on TV. I don't think I'm missing much, especially since it's burned into my brain how well Michael played with Scottie Pippen, with Horace Grant, with Cartwright, you know, with the Croatian guys that they'd get, you know, just enough to put them up over the top, Kerr and all the rest. So anyway, I'm fine not going and not being a season ticket holder. But if I wanted to go, I sure as hell wouldn't be going to any of these games at the end of the season where they're doing the load management. You know, you'd only buy the tickets to the games that matter, because we all know that, you know, in the NBA, there's a lot of games that don't matter. And unfortunately, fans are being taken advantage of by paying the full ticket price and then some maybe to go see a crappy product because their stars aren't on the court. I'd be worried if I was LA, because LeBron doesn't have a lot of gas left in that tank. He was a great player, no doubt, not taking that away from him. He's certainly not the GOAT, but he's a great player. And now the fact that he's kind of limping out instead of going out on top, Pete, it's almost sad, because Michael, you know, maybe with the Washington team when he was taken over there, you know, he played a few games and this and that, but Michael was a bull the whole time and, you know, played his face off the whole time. A lot of these players, I don't think people are excited to go watch them. And I think that's a problem. To answer your question directly, though, can they repeat? Absolutely. As long as the big man from Croatia stays healthy, Pete, yes, they can. They can repeat. And then it's just a question of, you know, beyond a repeat, can they three-peat? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's repeat first. That's a good basketball team.
They are. They're great. And I was talking about it just this past week with my guy Dave Schwartz on the Huddle, and we were talking about the idea of, you know, can the Timberwolves get a little bit further into the playoffs? And I think that they can, but the problem will be it depends where they land, because if they've got to play Denver early, I think that's an early exit. If they can get through a couple rounds before they get to Denver, then they'll lose. But Denver is that good. They really are. And it's amazing what they've been able to do there. And I'll tell you what, they have put the right guys together on that team. And I think they can repeat as well. So it ought to be pretty fun to watch. And by the way, you and I might know that Michael Jordan doesn't mind playing cards either. He kind of had, you know, back in the day in Chicago, we might have known something about a little card game here and there once in a while. So the guy was not only he was the GOAT on the court, and he was pretty much the GOAT off the court too.
Oh yeah, in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that in the future, or maybe we won't. Thanks for joining us, folks. We appreciate you tuning into the Rebel's Edge. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.